integrity helps us to live a life that's more authentic to ourselves. Now, if you've been tracking with us for a little while, you're going to see these themes are starting to overlap. We talked about authenticity. We talked about courage. We're talking about integrity, and we're talking about these core values, these core behaviors that we're operating out of. And you can see that like they're very intertwined. There's not one without the other, right? And practicing integrity allows us to live an authentic life, allows us to live more authentically. And here's how it does that. It's by aligning our actions with our values, right? We get to stay true to ourselves and avoid the discomfort that actually comes from living this double life, right? So I'll give you an example. So for me, I can remember when I was recording music, when I was a recording artist, I remember I met up with this producer, and I used to do a lot of things just on my own, and kind of had a team of people that I used to work with, a specific team of people. But then there was this opportunity to work with this dude, and he was more, you would call it, in the industry, if you would, and cool dude. Got a chance to connect with him, and at this point, I was creating music as an artist and getting some traction, not getting more public traction or whatever the case may be. This guy was kind of known to be more in those industry spaces and things. So I was excited. I'm like, cool, like we're going to get into this and we're going to see what happens with this, right? So this person could kind of like get me into those scenes and those spaces. So I was just like, this is a good opportunity to go play him some music. So I played him some music and he liked what I played him. And he was just describing how it was a little bit more unique and it wasn't necessarily sounding like everything that was out there. And I know for me, I was not trying to follow trends in the sense. I wanted to kind of stay authentic to what I had and what I felt like I can contribute. So I remember the next day we connected and he sent me over. I gave him the song and I gave him the stems. So stems are basically the vocal tracks and the individual tracks tracked out so he can do some stuff to it or whatever. And he sends me back that next day. He sends me the track that I did, but he sends it to me and he sends it to me with, he was a producer. So like he also made music. He sent it to me with one of his beats. Now his beats, they were super cool. They were super great. It definitely had more of the sound that everyone was trying to go for. And when I just heard my lyrics on there, it was just like, man, like, I hear what you're trying to do, but this doesn't fit. Like, it doesn't fit. It felt like we're trying to jam pack what people expect into a thing, but like, it was like, you can clearly see like, it's not a symbiotic relationship, right? And in that moment, I had to make a decision, right? I had to make a decision to either live authentically to my values and to my sound and to what I was creating in that moment and say, hey, man, this may be a great opportunity. Doing this may help me be heard by this person and that person, but it's not working. And I had to be honest and say, you know what? I don't think that is a fit. And it cost me things. It cost me relationships, and it cost me just getting to know different people in different spaces. But I rather stay authentic to who I was, because I felt like if I can feel it and I can see it, then others are going to feel it and others are going to see it. So like I didn't want to trade on that authenticity. So I stood my ground. I stood on my sound. And like, here's what like the lesson that kind of came out of that for me. It was just like, I always would rather lose for being who I am than to win for being something that I'm not. I would rather win for being who I am than I would rather lose for being who I am than to win for being something that I'm not. Because you got to continue to be the thing that you're not. If the thing continues, you can't just automatically switch and think that people fall in love with you for a certain reason. So if you are being inauthentic to yourself, whether in your friendships, whether in your relationships, the way you acquire those friendships is the way you're going to have to keep those friendships. So that's why I think it's not worth it to me, right? And I'm not saying that there's times where we can't benefit from changing, right? I'm not saying that I'm not saying that there's times that we can't benefit from changing. I'm not saying that there isn't a world where it's just like, hey man, like I could have made more music that sounded like that. But for me, it was a hill to die on for me because it was not me. Right? I'm talking about when you're in like blatant violation of like who you are, in those moments where it's just like, hey, take a step back and just consider whether it's worth it, because I would rather lose for being who I am than to win for being who I am not.